The warm lights of the wedding venue cast a golden glow as Victoria Ashford stood at the altar in her designer wedding gown, watching her fiancé Matthew Cole sit in his wheelchair at the end of the aisle. At 28, Victoria had achieved what many would call the ultimate goal: marrying a millionaire. Matthew was 35, heir to a real estate fortune, and had been confined to a wheelchair for 2 years after a car accident. Victoria had met Matthew 6 months ago at a charity gala. She had been working as an event coordinator, struggling to pay off student loans, when she caught his attention. Their whirlwind romance had been passionate and generous. Matthew showered her with gifts, took her to exclusive restaurants, and, within 3 months, had proposed with the ring that cost more than her annual salary. Victoria told herself she loved Matthew. She told herself the money did not matter, but deep down, she knew the truth: she was marrying security, lifestyle, and escape from financial struggle. The wheelchair made it even easier to rationalize. She could be his devoted wife, care for him, and in return never worry about money again. "Are you ready?" her father whispered beside her, preparing to walk her down the aisle. "Yes," Victoria said, adjusting her bouquet and putting on her most radiant smile. The music began. They walked down the aisle as guests stood and turned to watch. Victoria's eyes were fixed on Matthew, who watched her approach with an expression she could not quite read. When they reached the altar, the officiant began the ceremony. Victoria barely heard the words, thinking instead about the honeymoon in the Maldives, the penthouse they would move into, the life of luxury that was finally within her grasp. "If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now, or forever hold your peace," the officiant intoned. The traditional pause. Victoria smiled, certain no one would object. "I do." The voice came from the groom. "Matthew." Victoria's smile froze. "What?" Matthew wheeled himself slightly forward, facing the gathered guests. "I have a confession to make, to Victoria and to everyone here." Victoria felt panic rising. "Matthew, what are you doing?" "Being honest." Finally, Matthew took a breath. "For the past 6 months, I have been testing Victoria, testing whether she loved me for who I am, or for what I have." The room went absolutely silent. "I am not disabled," Matthew said. And then, to Victoria's shock and the gasps of the entire wedding party, he stood up from the wheelchair. Victoria felt the room spin. "What? But the accident was real," Matthew said. 2 years ago, I was in a wheelchair, but I recovered. 18 months ago, I have been walking normally for over a year. When I met you, I decided to pretend I was still disabled to see if you would love me regardless of my limitations." He looked at her with sad eyes. "Victoria, do you know how I knew you did not really love me? Because in 6 months, you never once asked about my physical therapy, my doctors, my recovery prospects. You never asked if I was in pain or struggling emotionally with my disability. You accepted the wheelchair because it made me seem vulnerable and safe, someone who would be grateful to have you and would shower you with money in return." Victoria felt every eye in the room on her. Shame, anger, and humiliation warred inside her. "That is not fair. I cared about you. You cared about my bank account," Matthew interrupted gently. "When I took you to expensive restaurants, you ordered the most costly items. When I bought you jewelry, you researched the prices online. When I proposed, the first thing you did was photograph the ring and show your friends. Not because you were happy to marry me, because you were happy about what the ring represented." Tears streamed down Victoria's face, not from heartbreak, but from being exposed in front of 200 people. "So this was all a lie? You lied to me for 6 months?" "Yes, and I am not proud of it," Matthew said. "But you lied too. You pretended to love me while really loving my wealth. At least I am being honest now. Before we make a mistake that would hurt us both." He stepped closer to her, speaking more quietly so only she could hear. "Victoria, actually did fall in love with you. The you I saw glimpses of when you forgot to perform, when you laughed at silly jokes, when you talked about your dreams of starting your own event planning business. But you were so focused on securing financial stability that you never let yourself be real with me." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Standing before her was not a disabled millionaire or a ticket to luxury, just a man who had been as dishonest as she had, and who was now offering her a choice. "I am calling off the wedding," Matthew said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not to humiliate you, but to free us both from a marriage built on deception. Victoria, you deserve to build the life you want through your own efforts, not by marrying money, and I deserve someone who loves me enough to see past the wheelchair or past the wealth." He turned to the guests. "I apologize for the dramatic reveal, but I needed to know the truth before committing my life to someone. I hope you understand." The wedding venue erupted in whispers and shocked conversations. Victoria stood frozen in her wedding dress, bouquet still clutched in her hands, as the reality crashed over her. Matthew wheeled his chair away. He could walk, but the chair had become symbolic and left through a side door. Victoria's father approached. "Come on, sweetheart, let's get you out of here." 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Victoria sat in her small office, reviewing plans for a corporate event. She had taken the money she had saved for the wedding money she would have spent trying to impress people and invested it in starting her own event planning business. The work was hard. The income was modest, but it was hers. Her assistant knocked on the door. "You have a visitor." Matthew walked in, no wheelchair in sight. Victoria's heart jumped, a mixture of emotions she still had not fully processed. "Hi," he said. "I heard your business is doing well." "It is surviving." "I am surviving." Victoria gestured to the small office. "Not quite the penthouse I thought I would be living in, but it is yours," Matthew said. "That matters." "Why are you here?" Victoria asked, not unkindly. "To apologize, and to check on you. What I did was cruel, even if I told myself it was self-protection. I humiliated you publicly when I could have just broken up with you privately." Victoria considered this. "You were right, though. I was marrying you for money. I was so focused on escaping my financial struggles that I forgot to build a life worth living. You did me a favor, even if it hurt." "Have you built that life now?" Matthew asked. "I am working on it. Turns out earning your own success is harder than marrying into it, but it feels better." She smiled slightly. "I'm actually proud of this struggling little business." "I was never proud of being your wealthy fiancé," Matthew nodded. "I am proud of you too, for what it is worth." They talked for an hour, honest in a way they never had been during their engagement. Matthew shared his own journey, realizing that testing partners by pretending to be disabled was toxic behavior born from his own insecurity and trust issues. Victoria shared how the failed wedding had forced her to confront what she really valued. "Would you want to get coffee sometime?" Matthew asked as he prepared to leave. "As actual honest people, not people playing roles?" Victoria thought about it. "Maybe, but not yet. I need to keep building my life first. I need to know who I am when I am not trying to impress someone or secure my future through someone else." "That is probably the healthiest thing either of us could do," Matthew agreed. A year later, Victoria's business had grown. She was successful, not wealthy, but comfortable and proud. When Matthew reached out again, she agreed to coffee. They built a friendship first, then slowly something more. But this time, it was real, built on honesty rather than tests, on mutual respect rather than financial calculation. "I was wrong to lie about the wheelchair," Matthew said one evening. "I was trying to protect myself, but really I was manipulating you. I was wrong to pretend I loved you when really I loved security," Victoria admitted. "We were both dishonest, but maybe we learned something." "What did you learn?" Matthew asked. "That the life you build yourself, even if it is smaller, matters more than the life you marry into. That self-respect is worth more than designer handbags. That I needed to become someone I was proud of before I could be a good partner to anyone." 2 years after the wedding that never happened, Matthew proposed again, not with a massive ring, but with a simple band and genuine words. "I love who you have become. I love who I have become. Will you marry me, not for money or security, but because we actually want to build a life together?" Victoria said yes. If this story reminded you that honesty matters more than performance, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment about when facing hard truths changed your path.